you've only got to look at all the nominations that he's received from Labour MPs. They go from, uber Blairites on one end to left-wing Labour MPs on the other. Keeping that broad church together, it sounds like a nice idea, and every leader wants to lead a united party. They don't want internal division. But actually doing it in practice will be very difficult indeed.
29 days ago, he wasn't even an MP. Today, Andy Burnham becomes leader of the Labour Party. On Monday, he'll be Prime Minister. Lots to discuss with Kevin Schofield, political editor of HuffPost UK. Kevin, good morning.
Morning, Rosie.
We're going to hear this speech from Andy Burnham on, at lunchtime, a little bit later after he becomes the Labour leader. He says the government will be unashamedly Labour in our priorities. What does that mean, do you think?
Well, it's a good question. I would quite like to know. I mean, it was one of the many questions I think that journalists would like to ask Andy Burnham, but unfortunately, as you said, in the month or so since he became an MP again, he hasn't really subjected himself to many interviews at all. He's given one big speech where he didn't take any questions. He had one radio interview, I think, and he's sat down with Gary Lineker. He's done a lot of videos on social media talking about kind of irrelevant stuff like, as you said there, milk and tea and what have you, or whether he wears sandals with socks, but nothing really shed much light on his political outlook. So it's all very motherhood and apple pie, I think. He's talking in general terms about party unity and unashamedly Labour, but in terms of the detail, we just don't know, and it's pretty remarkable that he's going to be Prime Minister in 3 days' time, and there's so many unanswered questions. Yeah,
he posted a video yesterday on social media saying, "I'd ask Andy anything," was the idea, and he'd sat down in Cardiff speaking to, anyone that the video suggested who had a question for him. And what did we learn from that? Sort of, he thought libraries were very important and should be prioritised, that defence was key. One thing he said, which we've heard from many Prime Ministers in the past, and I wonder how credible you think this claim is, Kevin, that he understood that there had not been proper investment or scrutiny and of social care.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, this is an issue that Andy Burnham has pursued for a very long time indeed. I remember when he was, if it was before the 2010 general election, and I was in the lobby at the time, and he talked about introducing a charge on inheritance. So I think it was a flat 10% charge on the inheritance, the estates of people who have passed, and that would then be just taken from the estate and put towards social care. Now, the Conservatives at the time called it a death tax during the 2010 general election. They won the general election, and that policy was never heard of again. So this is an issue that Andy Burnham has identified a very long time ago. Now, we know subsequent governments have spoken about fixing the social care crisis, and none of them have actually done it. And were Andy Burnham to come in and be Prime Minister and finally lead the government that solved that issue, he's talked about a national care service alongside the National Health Service, then I think that would be a huge reform that would be welcome, I think, across the country. But the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. He has identified the problem, but it's whether he can come up with a workable answer to that issue.
Yes, well, exactly. I'm not sure we'll get more detail on that today, but maybe on Monday. He says he wants to build a broad church government. That isn't straightforward. In some senses, because of the size of Andy Burnham's majority, he's got an awful lot of opinions to keep in check.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've only got to look at all the nominations that he's received from Labour MPs. They go from, uber Blairites on one end to left-wing Labour MPs on the other. Keeping that broad church together, it sounds like a nice idea, and every leader wants to lead a united party. They don't want internal division. But actually doing it in practice will be very difficult indeed. And as you mentioned at the top of the programme there, the big issue of who he makes as Chancellor, it looks as though it's going to be Shabana Mahmood, and that's gone down very badly with those on the left of the party who'd much rather see Ed Miliband get the job. So right from the very beginning, he's not even in the door yet, and we're already seeing that pledge of party unity coming under quite a lot of pressure.
Yes, so tell us, Shabana Mahmood, the current Home Secretary, who's definitely further to the right, maybe alongside Wes Streeting, the former Health Secretary who resigned. What do we know about what she thinks about how to run the economy?
Well, not very much is the honest answer. She's held a couple of shadow Treasury briefs, ironically, when Ed Miliband was the Labour leader in opposition, but that was a very long time ago. She's never actually had a Treasury job in government. We don't know very much about, if anything, really, about her economic views at all. I mean, the way one person put it to me was they think that the thinking behind it is very simple, that the money markets like strength. They see Shabana Mahmood is seen as a strong politician, therefore she should be the Chancellor. I mean, that's basically as far as the analysis perhaps goes. Now, she's aligned with what's known as the Blue Labour faction in the Labour Party, so they're socially conservative, but maybe economically quite interventionist. So maybe she'll surprise people. I know that she's a right-wing Home Secretary, but I think she's probably further to the left than a lot of people think when it comes to the economy in terms of taxation and things like that. So she may well surprise those on the left in a good way, that she's more left-wing economically than they think. But that's just a guess, really. We don't have any speeches or policy papers or anything like that would back up that assertion. So we just kind of have to wait and see.
Yeah, there's some frustration from Labour MPs who've spoken to The Times, not willing to put their name to it, I must say. But one of them said, it's baffling a lot of people because no one knows what her views are on the economy. Does she even have any? She's never done a speech or intervention. It's just absolutely bizarre. I can't see her as a sensible appointment. Ed would have been a much more experienced Chancellor because his original background was in finance. Rachel Maskell, one Labour MP who's on the left of the party, was prepared to put her name to a quote and say she thought this was going to be a mistake. I mean, Kevin, the relationship between Chancellor and Prime Minister is so interwoven. They've got to be sort of walking in step together.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've seen governments, in an awful lot of trouble when there is no relationship there, or where there's a strained relationship. I mean, the more successful governments you think of, Osborne and Cameron, they had a very close relationship, which obviously was very different from Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. That was a running sore all the way through the new Labour governments. So that relationship needs to be good. Clearly, Andy Burnham, it looks like, has decided that Ed Miliband, despite the fact that Ed Miliband is a close supporter, a close ally of Andy Burnham, has done more than most to make him Prime Minister. He's obviously decided that, I think, again, going back to party unity, I think, I've spoken to a lot of Labour MPs who thought that Ed Miliband becoming Chancellor would be a disaster. They just thought he's far too divisive, particularly Scottish Labour MPs because of his views on North Sea oil. So he's thrown his lot, it would appear, in behind Shabana Mahmood. We think they've got a good relationship. Clearly, it's not a bad relationship, but it needs to be very good. They need to be walking in step, particularly when there's so many economic problems, to make Andy Burnham's government a success. Yeah,
and the US administration also were prepared, I think it was last weekend, to say appointing Ed Miliband would be a mistake because they've got very different views to Ed Miliband on energy, as you've hinted, like those many of those Scottish MPs as well. Kevin, can we just take a step back a little bit? I mean, I started this by saying 29 days ago he wasn't even an MP. How extraordinary is this current situation?
I mean, I think it's unprecedented. I mean, he's not completely inexperienced. Obviously, he was an MP before for a long time. He was a minister under Blair and Brown. He was on the shadow front bench under Jeremy Corbyn and Ed Miliband. So he's not inexperienced in that regard. But, 9 years of being a mayor, I think, is no preparation for being Prime Minister. We saw that with Boris Johnson, who had initial, success in terms of winning the 2019 general election, but it all ended badly for him. Now, I'm not saying Andy Burnham is like Boris Johnson. Lots of ways they're very, very different, but it's just a big step up from being a mayor to being the Prime Minister. He's been out of Westminster for a very long time. He's only just getting to know lots of his MPs for a start. So I just can't think of any other situation like this where somebody has leapt from becoming a mayor to an MP then within a month as Prime Minister. And in fact, he's doing it without any leadership election where he might have been able or been forced to expand his thinking and explain where he stands on foreign affairs, for instance, which that's still pretty much a blank page. Economically, we've got a rough idea. So many things that we just don't know. So Labour are, I think, taking a big gamble, throwing their lot in behind someone who's relatively inexperienced in British politics, kind of frontline politics over the last 10 years.
The next few days are absolutely critical in terms of the first impression that he makes. That will be chiefly today, and then of course on Monday when he becomes Prime Minister. And some of the population waking up to the idea realise, oh my gosh, right, we've got a new Prime Minister. Who is this guy? Often we talk about the honeymoon period. Keir Starmer had a very short one. Has that become even tighter really in terms of how much time the public give you before they want to see something positive?
Well, yeah, I mean, we know that the public are very impatient now for change. Labour promised change 2 years ago when they won the election. The public don't think they've seen it. They've only got maximum 3 years until the next general election. We know that Andy Burnham wants to bring in sort of big organisational changes within Number 10, obviously Number 10 North, more devolution. Those are changes that take a long time to implement, and then, for people to actually feel any benefit from them. So time is not on his side. He will get a little bit of a honeymoon period, but not very long. Labour will get a bit of a bounce, I guess, a Burnham bounce in the opinion polls. He'll be much better at communicating than Keir Starmer. He comes across well, which in a way that Keir Starmer didn't. He seemed a little bit robotic, I guess, quite dull. So you'll have that in his favour, but that doesn't get you very far in terms of actually bringing about positive change that voters are crying out for.
Kevin, thank you so much. Kevin Schofield, the political editor of HuffPost UK.